Hello, happy Tuesday evening, and welcome to another live broadcast of the Cole Memo. We've got some exciting stories to talk about tonight, and I'm so excited that you're all tuning in. I see people flowing into the live stream as I speak. I'll engage with you all in here in just a moment. But in today's broadcast, again, we've got some exciting stories, including a story that raises a simple but important question: who gets flexibility under Illinois cannabis law and who doesn't? It's a story that I think will impact not only big licensees, but craft growers, medical patients, and ideally, if we're allowed, all adults in this state by way of home grow. It's an original article that I recently produced, and it's some original reporting that I feel like I've been sort of leading the way on. I've not seen anybody else talk about it. And so this article that we'll be discussing is among one of the stories we're discussing in today's episode. Some original reporting right here from the Cole Memo. So stay tuned for that. I'm excited to see what you all think about the exclusive info I have to share. We'll also be talking about a state's attorney general who recently filed an antitrust lawsuit against some of the largest multi-state cannabis companies in this country. And if you didn't know, a lot of those cannabis companies, at least 4 of them, I think, are based right here in the state of Illinois. The lawsuit alleges that some of these companies, or I guess the companies listed in the suit, coordinated shelf space agreements designed to protect market share and keep prices high. Does that sound familiar? No. If this is true, if the lawsuit and the allegations within it are true, this raises major questions about consolidation and whether legalization is delivering real competition in the markets that they create. We're also going to be talking about a recent article that asks, what did Illinois get wrong about legal weed? I'm going to be talking about what the report highlights, what I feel it leaves out, and more. Again, those are just a few of the stories we'll be discussing. I think I might get into more in this live broadcast because we are live throughout the entire show. We're taking callers. You can call in at colememo.com/live. When I open up the phone lines, I'll bring you on. No video required. You can stay anonymous. If you've got a perspective, a disagreement, or something to add, this is your chance to be a part of the broadcast. I'm trying to share the platform, and I love to hear your thoughts. If you'd rather not call in, drop your comments below. We might even put them on screen. So we're going to start off this broadcast with my latest segment for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Shout out to the folks from Cannabis Coast to Coast News for allowing me to be a correspondent, so I can share some of the things I find to be, some of the developments I find to be notable from our great state of Illinois. In case you missed it, I go live every Tuesday at 7:15 p.m. Central Time. Unless announced otherwise, I still drop bonus or pre-recorded episodes here and there. For example, yesterday I dropped an episode with a craft grower where we talk about a lot of different crazy things, how hard it is to make it as a craft grower here in the state of Illinois. I'll paste the link to that episode in the show notes, which, in case you didn't know, the show notes can be found in the description of the episode wherever you're listening from. So check that out. If you can't find that for some reason, go to thecolememo.com and look up the episode number that you're listening to, which this episode is episode 259 of the Cole Memo. So if you have trouble finding the show notes and you want to see some of the stories we discuss in this broadcast, or look up the episode that I just mentioned, you can find that in the show notes. So look that up on thecolememo.com. That's where you can find all of my content. Once again, every Tuesday, 7:15 p.m. That's where you can find us live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and other platforms. If you just go to colememo.com/live, you can find links there. You can go to colememo.com/YouTube. But again, Tuesday nights, 7:15 p.m. That's the time slot for
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
A Cole Memorandum.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
I'm Cole Preston with the Cole Memo with this week's Illinois Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Another year here in Illinois brings another legislative session, and with that, we have several cannabis-related proposals that have been filed, including what's known as the Cannabis Omnibus, which includes language for both medical cannabis patients and the industry here in Illinois. One of the provisions that has the most support would allow medical cannabis patients to shop at any dispensary statewide. The bill would also require dispensaries to implement patient prioritization plans, whether that be dedicated lines or hours. I recently sat down with Jason Brown from Illinois News Joint for episode 256 of the Cole Memo podcast.
Again, a lot of the stuff is just normal fixing what you need to do for a regular law.
As Jason was saying, these proposals are not controversial expansions. They're practical fixes that lawmakers have struggled to pass for years at this point. Now, I want to be clear, all of these bills have just been filed. They've not even advanced out of committee and would still need to go through the Illinois House, Senate, and be signed into law by the governor before any of this language could take effect. But I suppose that's something that all of us Illinois advocates and industry stakeholders could work towards during this year of 2026. Now, that'll do it for this week's Illinois Cannabis Report. Once again, I am Cole Preston from the Cole Memo, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Let's talk about some original reporting from thecolememo.com, which is where you can find all of my content. So for years, Illinois has maintained that cannabis must be grown indoors inside what the law calls an enclosed, locked facility. But quietly and with almost no reporting outside of the Cole Memo until fairly recently, I should say, credit where credit is due. There have been some outlets recently reporting on this, and we'll have that linked in the show notes. That rule has already been bent, I would say, in a way. Court records show that at least two of Illinois' largest cannabis operators have been growing outdoors for years using screen houses that were originally approved by the state. Now, before I get into this, I just want to acknowledge two things that always get said anytime I report or share information on this. This is stuff that I just hear pretty often, and I just want to acknowledge it right up front. Some people say I spend too much time covering industry developments. I get that. I try to, it's something, I've talked about home grow and all those things for years now. So I try to cover new things and industry developments, or there's been some lately, small, but I'm just trying to track, what people are doing and how they're feeling within the industry. So I get why people feel the way that they do. But the reason I'm actually covering this story particularly is because I don't think this is about the industry much at all. It's about flexibility and who gets access to it. Right now, that flexibility appears to be limited to just a couple of large licensed growers. And I don't think that makes sense. If outdoor or semi-outdoor cannabis cultivation is workable for them, it should be an option for all growers, including craft growers, medical patients, and ideally all adults through home grow. Again, I think it's ridiculous that we can't all home grow, and you should smash that like button on this episode if you agree with that. I also hear people say, so just right off the top, let me make that very clear. The first reason and the first thing I always hear is people saying, well, this is an industry story. No, the reason I'm covering this story and have been covering it for years is because I think outdoor cultivation should extend to all growers, and currently it does not, including home growers. And I know that some of you do that. I'll address that point in just a moment. I think it's great that you're doing that. And again, we'll get back to that in just a moment. I just think all people that are allowed to grow cannabis, and it should be all people, by the way, at least all adults should be allowed to grow cannabis. If you're allowed to grow cannabis, you shouldn't be forced to grow it indoors. The only reason we were ever forced to grow it indoors is because of prohibition and criminalization. That's why we had to figure out how to grow it indoors and, hide it. So, like I said, I wanted to just address my freedom fighters out there. I hear from people all the time that say, Cole, I grow outdoors anyways. I don't care what the law says. Respect, partner. I get it. You're not alone. I know plenty of people who take that approach, and I understand the impulse towards civil disobedience. In some ways, I encourage it. But just because some people, including myself, are willing to ignore the law, that doesn't mean I'm going to stop pointing out where the law itself is broken or unfair. Most cannabis consumers aren't sitting around studying statutes and worrying about regulatory details, and that's fine. I will say, though, that it's like, I don't know, it's like a mixed bag. I've seen a lot of people, and I've heard of a lot of people that are just growing outdoors, and they don't even have their medical card. They just thought, hey, weed's legal. I thought I could grow outdoors. Again, these people aren't really reading into the fine print. And again, that's fine. And I kind of like it, because the more people that just continue to grow cannabis and the more people that are just confused about the law, maybe that in some way can lead to some changes. But again, the reality is, even if you're not paying attention to the law can still take an interest in you. And when it does, the consequences of as they're written here in the state of Illinois can be very real, including for medical patients. I believe you can lose your right to home grow. And then, of course, if you don't have a medical card, you could look at prison time, because, many people like to say, oh, Cole, I read the Illinois cannabis law. It says if an adult without a medical card is growing anything less than 5 plants without a medical card, it's just a $250 fine. Yes, it is a $250 fine. But we also have possession laws. And I always like to say, if you're worth a lick of salt, I mean, you don't even have to be, if you just make sure to water your plants, you're going to exceed your possession limit. And so that's where you're going to run into issues. You don't even have to get it to harvest. They'll weigh your wet plants, and you'll be looking at exceeding your possession limit and potentially some really serious prison time. That's the issue. And I know I just addressed a lot of different things there. I also wanted to address something else that comes up every time I mention this topic: the argument that cannabis doesn't grow well outdoors in Illinois. That might be true, but I don't see that as a justification for legally preventing somebody from doing it. If you genuinely believe that cannabis, and I don't think some of you do, but if you think that just because this is honestly a comment I get all the time. They're like, Cole, why are you even fighting for people to be able to grow outdoors? It doesn't even grow well out here. And it's like, look, first of all, I actually have tried some pretty good weed that is grown outdoors here, but anecdotal experiences, let me just take a breath here. Anecdotal experiences aside, I think that just because it doesn't typically grow well, or in your experience, it doesn't grow well outdoors, that's a reason to just give up on the idea that we should fight for that flexibility. I'm just not really sure what to do with that argument. If you actually believe that we should just ignore this topic because you don't think the climate is suitable for it. So if you go to thecolememo.com, there's an article that I just recently wrote called Outdoor Cannabis is Quietly Being Allowed right here in the state of Illinois. And I'll just read it. I'll just go through a little bit of the high strokes here and read about it. This is a story I believe that I first reported. And if somebody knows differently, definitely let me know. But I have not heard of anybody. I've heard of people talk about it. That's why I started, reporting on it, quote unquote, writing about it, talking about it. I thought it was interesting. And so I think it was, a couple years ago at this point that I started writing about it. So Nature's Grace and Wellness and GTI have found themselves in years-long litigation with the Illinois Department of Agriculture after the state attempted to walk back their permits for outdoor screenhouses. So again, I'm just going to do the broad strokes today. You can read this full article. In this article, though, I share details that, as far as I can tell, like once again, have largely gone unreported. So the reason this kind of bubbled back up for me, and the reason it kind of popped into the news, is because with courts siding in favor of Nature's Grace and Wellness and GTI, the outcome appears to have inspired others. A Curaleaf subsidiary, Compass Ventures Incorporated, filed its own lawsuit seeking similar flexibility, asking a Montgomery County judge to order the department to process its permit request. And actually, Curaleaf CEO Boris Jordan provided comment on this subject, which you can read. It's linked here, as you can see on screen. Check out the full article for. All right, so let's look at some of this info that, like I said, has pretty well gone unreported. So how the screenhouses got built. So according to documents that I was able to get my hands on, Nature's Grace and Wellness began expanding their center, and they actually got that approval on May 3rd, and that's it right now. What I found most interesting about this is that it says the screen room, this is their approval when they got approved by the Illinois Department of Agriculture. They said the screen room is authorized to grow only low THC strains of cannabis with the sole purpose of extraction. And now what I think is interesting is that, and by the way, they, in court documents, Nature's Grace and Wellness, which is one of the two companies that currently has this ability. Oh, I should also say, before I go any further, I mentioned this lawsuit from Curaleaf, but I also recently, somebody commented on this article actually and said that there is another lawsuit. I believe they even listed the lawsuit number. We'll look at that here in just a second. Let me try to find it. So I want to be very clear. I'm displaying the comment that was posted on my article. I've not confirmed this. They say you should be aware that there is an additional suit arising out of Jackson County, the First Judicial Circuit, over the same issue that Curaleaf raises in its Montgomery County matter. And it says this one is titled IESO versus IDOA and is now pending in the Illinois Appellate Court for the 5th District after the court dismissed IESO's complaint. I want to be very, very clear that none of this information I've not confirmed this information. I'm sharing this. You should look this up. I'm not sure that this is false. I don't know why this person would lie about it, but stranger things have occurred. All right. So to continue where we left off, I was showing that approval, which, like I said, you've probably never seen before. I tried to FOIA this information and wasn't able to recover it, but I was able to get it from the court documents. So I was underlining a point that Nature's Grace and Wellness said that 40% of its annual crop actually comes from this screenhouse enclosure, their outdoor grow. And you can actually see that right here in the court documents. And this quote is from the Chicago Tribune, which is from one of the outlets that they actually gave us credit. I say us, they gave the show, the Cole Memo, credit for first breaking this story, which thank you, Chicago Tribune. The quote they featured, which I liked, is COO of Nature's Grace and Wellness, saying, "We like it quite a bit. To use Mother Nature to grow the plant is probably the biggest advantage. It's a lot lower electricity bill." Yeah, I'm sure it is. So, but anyways, this is some of the most notable things that I think nobody is really talking about with this story. Everybody's kind of talking about like, oh, it's outdoor grow, whatever. It's hemp. You can see actually as part of the court documents, Nature's Grace and Wellness's hemp licenses appeared as part of the records. You remember in that in that approval email that I'm displaying on screen right now, it says the screen room is only authorized to grow low THC strains of cannabis with the sole purpose of extraction. And then, like I said, here it is. From what I understand, they were required as part of this deal, if you will. You're going to grow outdoors. It's only going to be for extraction. And by the way, it can only be hemp, quote unquote, right? So the speed bump came when the state sent this message saying, like, hey, the law defines an enclosed lock facility as this. And basically, they're saying, please be advised that the outdoor screenhouse grow site is not considered an enclosed lock facility as required by the Medical Use and Adult Use Cannabis Acts. And so the portion of the permit modification approval allowing the cultivation of medical cannabis in an outdoor screenhouse grow site is hereby rescinded, effective at the end of the 2021 grow season. And yeah, that's when I believe maybe it started before then. It's been a while since I've looked into all these details, but these are some of the things that were included in the court record that, like I say, have never been published before. This one, however, has. It was produced. I published it last year. It was reminder letters where they basically were saying, hey, we're rescinding these permits. And that's what's kind of making me think that I think these were actually reminders for the 2022 season. So anyhow, back to the article. As I was saying, the department's original approvals for both of the screenhouses specified that they could be used only to cultivate, quote, low THC hemp for extraction purposes. The department argued that the cultivators had gone beyond that in some cases. Testimony that I read from state officials cited Illinois State Police testing from late 2020 that found THC levels at 1.6% or higher in the plants on one of the outdoor farms, well above those federal thresholds, the 0.3% THC threshold that allows you to qualify as hemp. The department also raised concerns about pesticide drift, water supply for the outdoor area, and in one of the two cases, insect infestations. They said that there was an aphid outbreak at one of the facilities, and they tried to use that to justify rescinding those permits. So here are some excerpts from the court documents that basically say the plaintiff was supposed to grow hemp. So in one case, they're saying, let me make this bigger so you can read it. The department rescinded the portion of the permit modification after discovering the proposed screenhouse structure was utilized to grow high THC cannabis rather than low THC hemp. And then here's another excerpt. Plaintiff was not in compliance with the approval for low THC strains of cannabis because low THC strains of cannabis, commonly referred to as hemp, is defined as 0.3% THC or less, but testing by the Illinois State Police in November or December revealed THC levels at 1.6% or higher. I like that little typo there. Had TCH levels, they said here. Or maybe that's not a typo. Maybe that's just an acronym for something that I don't understand. According to the court records, and this might be interested for licensees listening in, Nature's Grace and Wellness estimated that they extracted almost 286,000 milliliters of distillate from the hemp. I'm putting in air quotes. You can't see me right now. From the hemp that was cultivated and harvested in the screenhouse in 2021. Based on those figures, they estimated that they generated approximately $5,284,223.51 from the hemp that was cultivated and harvested in the screenhouse, and that was just in 2021. BioTrack data was provided to help back up these claims, and I encourage you folks to take a look at this because you'll be able to see some of the products that were created using hemp, right? So check it out. Also, I posted a picture of this GTI product that clearly labels right here hemp derived extract. So we will start to wrap this story up by just talking about what happens. So, after the state of Illinois attempted to revoke the ability for these companies to grow outdoors, Nature's Grace and Wellness challenged the decision in court, arguing that when the department sent that email, or however they granted this approval, they effectively created a new rule by reinterpreting enclosed locked facility without following the Illinois Administrative Procedure Act. They argued that the sudden recession jeopardized millions in investments, jobs at their facility, the statewide supply of legal cannabis, and their ability to remain competitive. And look, there's actually some validity, I think, to, or at least when I talk to different people around the state, and I'm going to play one person specifically, but this perspective is not unique, and I'm not dissing on this person. I'm trying to illustrate that I've heard this same perspective from many people, and so let's play the perspective from a cannabis licensee here in the state of Illinois on Nature's Grace and Wellness's outdoor grow section.
There's not enough material out there that we're going to produce to give you. So now you want to talk about market. Let's talk about the market. Let's just talk about the market. And if Nature's Grace and Wellness's outdoor crop didn't get put to oil, there wouldn't be enough oil. And our oil would be $20,000 a liter. So I asked David Lakeman at the last thing, I said, you either let us grow a little outside, to where we can have a little oil on our own. But if they shut down Nature's Grace and Wellness's outdoor grow, it'll just destroy the market, in my opinion. And I don't want to see that. I think Tim and Larry, they're smart people. They were locked. Let's face it, the CRTA tells you what you need, and as far as I'm concerned, they met the requirement.
Yeah. Are you saying, because this has been a story in the news, it's something that I, has shared information about and such, are you saying that if these outdoor grows weren't essential, or at least specifically with regard to Nature's Grace and Wellness, like if it was not allowed to go on, that the oil market would essentially crash, and then that would have a cascading effect on vapes and edibles?
Everything. It would affect the entire market.
So again, that perspective is not necessarily unique, and it's just interesting. GTI made similar arguments, pointing out it had built and operated these screen houses for years without any incident under the department's supervision, and the courts agreed. They say IDOA, the Illinois Department of Agriculture, bypassed the required notice, comment, and publication process. And so from what I understand, that means that GTI and Nature's Grace and Wellness have been allowed to continue to use the screenhouse setup for outdoor cultivation. And by allowing them to do that, the decision seems to set a precedent that could guide future cases. We'll see what this Curaleaf case turns into, and we'll see if those other cases that I mentioned at the beginning of this segment turn out to be real, because again, I've not validated that, but B, we'll see if they you get what I'm saying. We shall see. And I guess just to clarify, what I mean to say is that this could really be a flashpoint in the debate over the strict cultivation rules here in the state of Illinois. Like I started off with, let's just be candid. Well-capitalized operators may be best positioned to follow this path, though craft companies, many of which have faced repeated setbacks, have sought similar flexibility. And I just think if this kind of trickles down, and I hate to use that phrase, but if it trickles down, if this access trickles down or becomes a little bit more widespread, universal, if you will, I would hope that we would be able to ride the coattails. And again, I know it's a Hail Mary. Some of you might be like laughing at me right now, but it's what I'm really hoping turns into a win for medical patients. And if we can get home grow for all past the goal line, again, I'm not going to sit here and say that Illinois is the best climate to grow cannabis outdoors, but I don't still think that that is any reason not to allow people to grow outdoors. Again, there's more to this article. I'm scrolling through it now, including the state of Illinois' response, which they originally declined to respond to me a few different ways on the record. And if you read through these reports that I have written, which I'll have linked in the show notes, you can see that on video and through email. They have declined to respond, but they did respond to the Chicago Tribune. I reached out to the Illinois Department of Agriculture and said, hey, can I get that full comment you provided to the Chicago Tribune? And then they did provide comment to me. So I pasted that below. It's the same comment that the Chicago Tribune received. Then I've got a little bit of a section about Nature's Grace and Wellness. This was an article in 2018. I just thought it was interesting to read it now. And the close of the article, and I know I've already said this, but I'll just say it to close out this segment. And I hope you're enjoying this live broadcast. By the way, folks, I'll start to acknowledge comments here in just a moment, maybe even bring on a caller or two. Once again, you can call in now at colememo.com/live. We are officially taking callers. But just to close out this segment, as I've stated several times, I believe that outdoor cultivation is a right that should be available to everybody, licensed cultivators, medical cannabis patients, and ideally, if we can get that past the goal line, all adults in Illinois by way of home grow. It should not remain an exclusive privilege granted to just 2 licensees in the state. It's just going to be interesting to see how this case develops and what the future holds with regard to how we can cultivate cannabis in the great state of Illinois. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Drop your comments below. I am curious to hear what you think. We'll read those comments out aloud here in just a moment, right here on
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo. The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole memorandums.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo is what allows this whole thing to go on.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
Hey, this is Tommy Chong, and you're listening and watching the Cole Memo.
Cheers, everybody. Cheers. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Once again, we've been having great comments and we've got more things to get to, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But I just wanted to acknowledge some of our people that are tuning in live. Smoking Pots and Pans says, happy Tuesday, folks. Happy Tuesday, Smoking Pots and Pans. Good to see you tonight. Genetic Memory Farm says, good evening, good peeps. I hope you're all safe and stoned. Daily Homegrown, smash that like button. And Genetic Memory Farms, I think you're going to like what I have to say here in a moment. But I'll read your comment aloud right now. If adults can't home grow, especially renters, did we really legalize it, or did we just invent more ways for the law to punish us? In fact, one defense attorney has come on the show to argue that's exactly what we did. There are more ways to get in trouble post-legalization. We made up new laws, like the odor-proof container law. Yeah. You can literally get fined just if an officer smells it, and you can get charged with a Class A misdemeanor. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. If you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's one of the best ways to support the show. We're taking callers. You can call in now at colememo.com/live. I'm curious to hear what you think about what's being discussed in today's episode of the Cole Memo. Folks, we're going to be right back. Why don't we talk about what Illinois got wrong about legal weed, which will include some of my thoughts on home grow and more. And then maybe we'll close out the show with the MSOs getting sued. I don't know if you ever heard about it, but we're going to talk about it. So somebody just asked a question. They ask, isn't there new legislation regarding the stank law, as they refer to it? And yes, there is new legislation that would repeal the odor-proof container law. We do have a caller, so we're going to bring them on. Looks like it's Sergio from Wanna Mama Lights, I think. I can't see the rest of the name. Hey, you're on the Cole Memo. How's it going, man? Or how's it going? You're muted if you're talking, by the way. Maybe they didn't mean to call in. They said, yeah, Wanna Mama Delights. My bad. Still working. Oh, they did not mean to call in. Okay. No worries. Hey, if you didn't mean to call in, go back to colememo.com/live and or colememo.com/YouTube. That's where we're live at. I'm just going to remove you from the stage, and we're going to talk about exactly what Genetic Memory Farmans just commented about. He says, what Illinois got wrong? How many days is this episode going to be? It's a great question. Okay, so today I wanted to flag an article from the Chicago Reporter. The headline is, What Illinois Got Wrong About Legal Weed. I'll flash that article up on screen here in just a moment. It's a piece that looks at how Illinois' equity first cannabis rollout has played out 6 years in. And especially it has a special focus on how it's affected license holders who are still struggling to either open or stay afloat. And the reporting itself is solid. It includes quotes from licensed operators and advocates who have appeared on this show before. Names you'll probably recognize. If you want that full context and those firsthand accounts, I recommend reading the article in full. Today, I'm just going to briefly talk about what the article emphasizes, what I feel it leaves out, because I think that's the framing that matters. Quick reminder, we are live, so drop a comment below and it may show up on screen, or you can call in at colememo.com/live. I appreciate the people that are dropping comments in support of the show. You can find all of my work at colememo.com. Now, here's where I want to zoom out. So I'll put the article on screen here. It is. The headline, once again, is What Illinois Got Wrong About Legal Weed. It's written by the Chicago Reporter. Credit to them for their reporting. The article leads with a quote, and I'll scroll down so that you can see it. It's right here somewhere there. I don't know. I'll just read. Basically, the Cannabis Regulation Oversight Officer says the governor's stated purpose has always been to right the wrongs caused by the war on drugs. The quote is, the governor's stated purpose has always been to right the wrongs caused by the war on drugs, end quote. And that framing immediately caught my attention because, as I've reported repeatedly over the years, and as the data from the state and some of our Illinois universities has confirmed, cannabis-related arrests have continued since legalization. And in fact, last year we saw the first year-over-year increase in arrests in 10 years. Yes, since 2016, when we originally decriminalized cannabis, then we quote unquote legalized it in 2020. And for the first time since then, we've seen an increase in arrests. So my question is, how are we supposed to be righting the wrongs if the wrongs are still happening? That reality is barely addressed in this piece, and I'm not trying to diss on the Chicago reporter, but when you lead off with a quote like that, it's like, could you just address it a little bit? And I'm sorry if I missed it. It's possible that I missed it. I'm wanting to like reread the article. I'm like, I don't know, sometimes when I get high, I get paranoid and I give people really big berth on the benefit of the doubt. So I will say again, check out the full article. Um, but it just seems like a lot of the reporting as of late is just focused on license holders. And I even get flack for that. So I'm one to talk. Uh, I just feel like when coverage, though, centers on industry pain without grappling with ongoing enforcement harm, something really important gets lost. And one of the things that I think the industry needs to understand, and I know that some people even commented on this with regard to this on some of our recent episodes. I think the industry needs to understand that if they want broader public support, if they want us to call our legislators, then they need to give consumers a reason to call their legislators or back those reforms. The proposals can't just be industry only wish lists. They need to keep they need to like establish a real connection back to the communities legalization was actually supposed to help. Things like meaningful decriminalization, home grow for all adults, policies that actually resonate beyond boardrooms and trade groups. Um, I just, and I've said this before with some of these license holders. I say when they walk into the dispensary, they have no idea what a licensee has had to endure to open a store or to get the product to that store. If you want to have people care, give us a reason to. Right now, industry only proposals do not energize cannabis consumers. That's a political problem, whether people want to admit it or not. And I understand that there's a lot of energy behind the medical, allowing medical patients to shop at all dispensaries. And I'm supportive of that concept and idea. And I think it's absolutely insane that there's really nothing getting in the way of it, really, in my opinion. Like, I think honestly, as I've said in the past, I think the state is just allowed, they're scared to get sued if they basically allowed dispensaries to do that by way of a rule. They want the legislature to take that on. As a result, we've not seen any movement on that specific proposal for the last 6 years. And to quote Medical Cannabis Advisory Board member and original cannabis advocate, I believe he was actually the first patient in the Illinois Medical Cannabis Program, Jim Champion. He said that they've been working on the allow medical patients to shop at all dispensaries for longer than they pushed to create the medical cannabis program. And I don't know if that was him just exaggerating or if that's literal. I took the quote literally when he said that. He actually said that at a medical cannabis advisory board meeting. And like I say, yeah, if these people want us to support, so people are generally supportive of that proposal. But a lot of the other proposals, I guess my point is, I don't think most people are aware of them. You're probably aware of them because you watch the show or you watch other shows or you check out reporting from, the people that are tuned in right now are cannabis nerds. But I don't know. I don't know. I appreciate everybody for tuning in and dropping comments. We've got a good amount. Some people even tuning in from X. Somebody tagged Tom Weedlaw, which I believe is our friend Tom Howard from Cannabis Industry News. Daily Homegrown says the problem is their goal is strictly revenue or business centric. It's not about access to the consumer. Yeah. Again, I think the reporting here, though, is worth your time, especially for those firsthand accounts from license holders. They've shared their stories on this show before, but, hear the latest development in their story. I'll include those links to the full article in the show notes. Check out the description from wherever you're listening from. I'd like to hear from you. What do you think Illinois can do to... Do you think my idea is like on target? Like, do you think we have to if Illinois industry wants something to pass and they want there to be this, big swell of energy and they want everybody to call in, don't you think they need to like combine their proposals with some proposals that will give consumers the energy to call in? They could put up like flyers in their dispensary. I don't know though. Maybe it goes back to the idea that some people are not looking to like teach a man to fish, right? Why would you hang a poster in your dispensary that says, "Hey, we'll fight for your right to home grow if you support our right to, expand canopy size," or whatever else. Perhaps that hypothesis is accurate, though I'm curious what you all think. Does anybody have any other thoughts? Again, you can call in now, colememo.com/live. You don't even have to turn on your video. Drop a comment below. What do you think? Um, yeah, curious what you all think. If you have any thoughts, let me know. We're going to have a little bit of an open floor here at the end, but I want to cover my last story, which is the MSOs. They're getting sued. Let's talk about it. So you may have heard about it by now, but Ohio's Attorney General is suing some of the biggest cannabis companies in the country. This is going to be interesting. They're accusing them of working together to keep prices high and shut out smaller local operators. In a new antitrust lawsuit, Ohio's Attorney General Dave Yost alleges that multi-state cannabis operators have coordinated behind the scenes to control shelf space and basically work together to keep prices high in Ohio's dispensaries. The claim is that the processors out of the market. I'll throw this information from the Ohio Attorney General on screen here. Super interesting development, especially to see this. I mean, this is ohioattorneygeneral.gov. You can see it in their media news releases for February 2026. Once again, the link to this will be added in the show notes. If you're listening to this after the fact, check out the show notes for all links referenced. This is a case that raises big questions about competition consolidation and whether cannabis legalization is actually delivering on its promise, consumer choice, and fair markets. I'm sure everybody has a lot of thoughts about that, but a quick reminder that this show is recorded live to tape, which means you can still be a part of the conversation by commenting below, and we may show that comment on screen. You can call in at colememo.com/live. If you like what I'm doing here, consider supporting the show at colememo.com/support. And I mentioned it just a moment ago, but if you look in that episode description, you'll find the show notes with links to the sources and documents we're talking about today. So according to this lawsuit, this all started with a tip that was submitted to the Ohio Attorney General's office in October of last year. The tip alleged that large and vertically integrated cannabis companies operating both in Ohio and nationally were engaging in what's described as shelf space allotments. In plain terms, the allegation is that these companies entered into a national level reciprocal purchasing agreement. Say that 3 times. They agreed to prioritize each other's products in Ohio dispensaries while reducing or eliminating purchases from independent Ohio-based cultivators and processors. Investigators say that senior representatives from the companies met in late 2022 during a period of falling prices and increased supply and agreed to protect their own shelf space by cutting out smaller competitors. Some companies are accused of setting internal quotas that reserved a substantial percentage of dispensary shelves exclusively for products tied to those agreements that they established. very interesting stuff to hear, that there's an allegation, and apparently investigators say that they've got proof that these things happen, that these agreements are real. The defendants named in the lawsuit are Ascend Wellness, Air Wellness, the Cannabis Company, Cresco Labs, Curaleaf, Green Thumb Industries, Jushi, Trulieve, and Verano. Some of those names might sound familiar if you shop in Illinois dispensaries. The lawsuits allege violations of Ohio's Valentine Act. Reminder, boys, Valentine, everybody. I don't mean to just make this about boys. Reminder that Valentine's Day is coming up if you're into that sort of thing. Anyways, apparently the lawsuit alleges violations of Ohio's Valentine Act, including reciprocal trade agreements. So what I mentioned earlier. According to the state, the result was fewer choices for consumers, reduced quality, less innovation, and prices that stayed artificially high. Things I like to complain about. Attorney General Yost says the goal of the lawsuit is injunctive relief. In other words, to stop the alleged conduct and restore competition in Ohio's cannabis market. Of course, this is a developing case, and it's one that could have ripple effects well beyond Ohio. Be interesting to see how this all plays out, especially as more states grapple with consolidation in legal cannabis. Curious how this reads to you. What are your thoughts? Does this dynamic seem familiar to any other states that you're aware of? Let me know what you think. Drop a comment below or call in now at colememo.com. It looks like we've got comments rolling in. I also had some commentary that I wanted to share on screen that you can look up at your leisure. And we'll just see. We shall see. But let's check out the comments really quick. I've got that ready. Genetic Memory Farm says, I think it is intersectionality. Everyone is fighting for their thing, and we are no longer a movement. It needs a more educated consumer, and that comes from more home grow. Daily Homegrown says, it sounds like the good old boys club, and I'm all for it getting called out. It's interesting stuff. It's an interesting development, to say the least. On Twitter, the host of, or one of the co-hosts, I should say, of the Dales Report, posted some commentary on this and said, for anyone who saw the lawsuit filed last week alleging antitrust issues in the Ohio cannabis market, I had my in-house paralegal Claude draft a memo that puts the 50-page complaint into layman's terms. Enjoy. And he posted that below. So if you want to check that out, that's posted on February 9th around 12:22. Looks like one of the commenter says, a whistleblower, Jesus H, 9 MSOs is not a monopoly. Anthony says correct. I would actually agree that that is not a monopoly. That is what's called an oligopoly. So look it up, which if you, I don't know if they throw around the word cartel in this lawsuit. I think they do, though. Let's do a quick search of the lawsuit. So I've got it up here. Cartel. No, they don't. For some reason, people were saying that they said the word cartel. I swear I thought that was being said. But the reason I am bringing up oligopoly is because if you look up oligopoly and cartel, you'll see that an oligopoly cartel, like oligopolies, yield or birth cartels, for lack of better words. So it's something that just happens. But that's a bunch of nerdy stuff on economic systems that I don't know much about because I'm not an economist. We'll have to get Bo Whitney back on in the future for a little bit of commentary on that. But curious what you all think. We're to keep the show rolling. We're actually about to close it out. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of the Cole Memo. In case you missed it, the new link for next week's live broadcast is available. So check that out. I'm working on a few different shows. Things have been a little busy lately, but we've got some things going down the pipe. It's open floor now before we close it all out. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Drop your comments below if you have any questions or thoughts about anything that was covered in today's show. You can call in now at colememo.com/live. I'm just going to spark it up for a second before we close this motherfucker out. Let's see here. I think that let's see how this works. I don't know about this. We're going to try something out, folks. Genetic memory farms. Sometimes you hit the joint and the joint hits back. All right. I don't know how this is playing, so we'll see. Genetic Memory Farms asks, are you doing any in-person events anytime soon? I'm planning to go to the Midwest Cannabis Forum, which I think you actually had a good comment about. You were like, why would anybody go to this? First off, I mean, the reason I'm going to it is just because I think there's going to be a lot of different people in the room. It's going to be an interesting forum. I'm going to try to get some interviews lined up. Hopefully do some on the ground interviews. I got these these little microphones for in the field recording, if you will. So I can be like, you're in the Epstein files. What do you have to say about yourself? Like, get them right while they're walking out. I don't think, hopefully nobody that's attending will be from there. But anyways, that's the, will be on that list, but that's the closest in-person event that I will be on that I'm aware of. So check that out. It's in, somebody asked, where is that at? It's a good question. It's in Chicago, Midwest Cannabis Forum. I'll throw it on the screen here. Here we go. Salvage 1 in Chicago. It's on Thursday, March 12th. So if you can't make it there, I'll be in Chicago on March 12th. So we could, if you're around and in the area, we could do something, I guess. It all depends on how things shake out, of course, but that's the closest thing I can think of. I'm probably forgetting something right now. Genetic Memory Farms says, but you're pressed, so it makes sense for you to go. Is it for businesses? I think it's for everybody. There's definitely going to be businesses there. I think there's going to be policymakers there, like politicians, potentially cannabis regulators there. When I've gone to events like this hosted by Grown in the past, there are typically cannabis consumers there, people that I'll just be like, oh shit, you're rolling up a joint right now, let's go blaze it. So Eddie Meds, good to see you, man. I gotta text you and we gotta talk about things. Home grow is legal to grow outdoors. Yes. The way you are doing it, yes. But the way most people are doing it, at least from what I understand, at least from what the state has told me and some of the presentations they gave, which I've published on colememo.com, they wouldn't just let you grow it like tomatoes outdoors. So Yes, no, I'm excited. Yeah, and there you go. Yours was validated by a judge. See, this is, maybe, I don't know if you'd be comfortable with it. Maybe we can take a video of it. We don't have to reveal where you are and all that stuff. I don't want to like give you any trouble. But it would be cool to maybe do a little video and show people how you do it, because you're doing it like, I would say the way, this is like why I covered that article. The way you're doing it is why I covered this article. And I'm so glad you tuned in, because this is a great way to end the episode. Of course, keep those comments coming in. But Cannabev says, did you cover the grows the MSOs have? Yes. Yes, we covered that earlier in the show. And that's kind of like, it's interesting. This person that's commenting right now, this is the whole reason I'm covering this show, because as soon as I heard about this, I was like, this can't not apply to home growers, because technically speaking, and I've talked to the state about this, home growers are licensed growers. And so they have to conform by basically the same regulations with regard to the cultivation of it and how you cultivate it. Of course, with some exceptions like canopy space versus plant count. But for the most part, enclosed locked space, from what I've been told, is defined pretty similarly. Actually, this one presentation the state showed me, it was interesting how they defined it. It had like a dwelling with plumbing, and so there was like a very interesting specific definition. Which, yeah, I'm getting lost in the sauce on this, but it's very interesting, and I look forward to talking about it more on the show. And like I said, this exactly what you're doing with your outdoor grow setup is what I think everybody should be able to do, because not only does it allow you to harness the great climate of Illinois, which we're a farming state, come on, but also it keeps your plants secure. If people need that security theater, it's a great way to do it, where, for the most part, I should say, nobody can see the plants. I know plants, they get as big as trees in some cases, or most cases. But for the most part, people aren't going to be getting into the thing, I guess is my real point. We should live in a world where it doesn't matter and all this stuff. But again, I call it security theater. It's kind of like TSA, or TSA. That's a good analogy. He says mine sure do. Yep. No, that's why I said in most cases, because I know yours sure do. So we'll definitely, if we can, we'll talk more about that whole situation. We'll keep you posted. At the bare minimum, we can share some like high level details, I'm sure, but stay tuned on that. Stay tuned on that. Yeah. We'll keep you posted. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Once again, we're live every Tuesday, 7:15 p.m. Check it out. Go to colememo.com/YouTube if you want to check out the next live stream. The link is up now. And if you missed the live stream and you want to check out live streams in the future so that you can have your comments acknowledged on screen, or if you want to call in, it's always fun when people call in. It's been a while. So in any case, I appreciate you all for tuning into this broadcast of
The Cole Memo.
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 The Cole Memorandums. The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo. This drug is dangerous. You cannot play with it. It's not funny. It's not something to laugh about. Good people don't smoke marijuana.